जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा श्रील प्रभुपादा। जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा श्रील प्रभुपादा। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रत्यक्ष स्तोत्र सदस्य श्रीमती स्वयं जैसे भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन संस्थापक आचार्य शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रत्यक्ष स्तोत्र सदस्य श्री भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद लकोर किशोरदास महाराज की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद सच्चिदानंद श्री भक्ति विनोद ठाकुरा की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद वैष्णव साधु श्री जगन्नाथ दास महाराज की जय। जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास अविनाश गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नमाचार्य श्री हरदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से गो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। श्री श्री गौरंगी बेंगलोर ईश्वर भगवान की जय। श्री मायपुर धाम की जय। श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। गंगा मई की जय। यमुना मई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। श्री हरनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन वर्तमान गुरुवृंद की जय। समाहित भक्तवृंद की जय। गौर प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Divim Saraswati Vyasam Tado Jayamudire. Nashtaprayeshu apatreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. Bhagavati uttama sloke bhaktir bhavati naishtihi. Hare Krishna. So welcome you all to the Friday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 32, Text 29. Yata mahan aham रूपस त्रिवृत पंच विदस्वराट एकादश विदस्तस्य वपुर अंडम जगत्यतः Yata mahan aham rupas trivrid pancha vida swarat ekadasat vidastasya vapur andam jagat yataha. Yata mahan aham rupas trivrid pancha vida swarat ekadasat vidastasya vapur andam jagat yataha. Translation Srila Prabhupada. From the total energy, the Mahatattva, I have manifested the false ego, the three modes of material nature, the five material elements, the individual consciousness, the 11 senses, and the material body. Similarly, the entire universe has come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is described as Mahatpada, which means that the total material energy known as Mahatattva is lying at his lotus feet. The origin or total energy of the cosmic manifestation is the Mahat Tattva. From the Mahat Tattva, all the other 24 divisions have sprung, namely the 11 senses, including the mind, the 5 sense objects, the 5 material elements, and then consciousness, intelligence, and false ego. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of the Mahat Tattva, and therefore, in one sense, because everything is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, there is no difference between the Lord and the cosmic manifestation. But at the same time, the cosmic manifestation is different from the Lord. The word Swarat is very significant here. Swarat means independent. The Supreme Lord is independent. The individual soul is also independent. Although there is no comparison between the two qualities of independence, the living entity is minutely independent and the Supreme Lord is fully independent. As the individual soul has a material body made of 5 elements and the senses, the Supreme Independent Lord similarly has the gigantic body of the universe. The individual body is temporary. Similarly, the entire universe, which is considered to be the body of the Supreme Lord, is also temporary, and both the individual and universal bodies are products of the Mahatattva. One has to understand the difference with intelligence. Everyone knows that his material body has developed from a spiritual spark, and similarly, the universal body has developed from the supreme spark, super soul. As the individual body develops from the individual soul, the gigantic body of the universe develops from the supreme soul. Just as the individual soul has consciousness, the supreme soul is also conscious. But although there is a similarity between the consciousness of the supreme soul and the consciousness of the individual soul, the individual soul's consciousness is limited, whereas the consciousness of the supreme soul is unlimited. This is described in Bhagavad Gita 13.3. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi. The super soul is present in every field of activity, just as the individual soul is present in the individual body. Both of them are conscious. The difference is that the individual soul is conscious of the individual body only, whereas the super soul is conscious of the total number of individual bodies. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurpuntamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupakata Mahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Vidapadakammalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabdutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेशा गुप्ता कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यः च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मोहन करुदेवाचलम पंकम लंगे दिग्गजपादमहमंते श्रीगुरम तेनतात्म परमात्मात्म श्री चैतन्य. Hare Krishna. So here, Lord Kapil Deva is explained to his mother Devaki about how Mahat Tattva originates from the Lord himself, and also similarly the entire universe has emanated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in detail, a lot of important points are mentioned in the purport. So the first is that this Mahat Tattva actually is the sum total of all the material elements which are mentioned in the translation itself. The false ego, the three modes of material nature, the 5 material elements, the individual consciousness, the 11 senses, and material body. All these combined together make the Mahatattva. So this Mahatattva is also an emanation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and uh, this Mahatattva is uh, situated at the lotus feet of the Lord. That is why the Lord is described as Mahatpada, on whose feet, lotus feet, total material energy, that is Mahatattva, is lying. So, from the Mahatattva, all the other 24 divisions are sprung, that is the 11 senses, including the mind, the 5 sense objects, the 5 material elements, and then consciousness, individual, uh, 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 intelligence, and finally false ego. All these elements come out from the Mahatattva. And then further from each one, different elements come out. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of this Mahatattva. Now, it is mentioned Brahma Samhita also. Lord Brahma prays Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Natiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. That means the Lord is the cause of, supreme cause of all causes. There is no other cause other than Krishna himself. So there is a point mentioned here that because the Mahatattva emanates from the Lord, there is no difference between the Lord and the cosmic manifestation. Now, this is what is called simultaneous, one and different. Now, because these emanations come from the Supreme Lord, it is not different from the Lord. But at the same time, the cosmic manifestation is different from the Lord. We'll try to understand a little bit of this simultaneous, one and different. Now, for example, the material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, all these are emanating from the Lord. So they are non-different from the Lord. At the same time, earth is an element separate from the Lord. Water is a separate element. So this way, everything is simultaneously one and different from the Lord. This is explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very nicely in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And in a nutshell, also in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The point is, now everything has a creator. For example, we might see a very nice painting of a rose flower. So the rose may be made artificially by painting in the paper, but there is someone who has drawn that rose. So behind that painting, there is a person who is an artist who has drawn. Now, it may not have fragrance, but what happens is that when we see a real rose, we might be able to see it by chance. So when we see that photograph also in the paper, we will immediately read, yes, this is a photograph of a rose flower, though it might not have fragrance. So this is how behind everything there is a creator, there is an artist, there is a designer, and the supreme creator is Krishna himself. Based on his creation, then Brahma does the secondary creation. Brahma gives forms to various living entities based on their karma, their desire, etc. So in Bhagavad Gita itself, Lord Krishna says, I am the seed of all the existences. He is the source of everything. So there is a seed for everything that grows in the material world. For example, if we see a mango tree, there are seeds that come out of the mango fruit itself. Now, from the seed, the fruit comes out, and apart from that, from that fruit itself, the seed, when it is planted, further trees grow up. So in this way, the seeds further grow into fruits, grains, etc., and the same in turn are used for multiplication. But the eternal seed of all these is none other than Lord Krishna himself. Whereby by his costless this thing, everything manifests from him. Similarly, the seed of our existence is given by Krishna. Now, the example is given in Bhagavad Gita also. A man lays a seed in the woman, and the embryo thereafter grows into a child. So, Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Yonishu Kaunteya Murtaya Sambhavantiya Tasham Brahma Mahat Yonir Aham Bija Pradapitaha. He says that it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed giving father. That means Lord Krishna is the seed, ultimate seed of all the existence that is there. Similarly, in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, first sloka says, Janmandyasya yataha. So the translation is, O my Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. That means Krishna is the cause of creation, sustenance, and as also annihilation. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no cause beyond him. So Krishna is the ultimate cause and there is no cause beyond Krishna. Now, we might externally try to understand that nature is a cause because of which many things manifest, but there is a remote cause, and that remote cause is Krishna. Nature is the immediate cause, but Krishna is the remote cause. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 39, he says, O Arjuna, I am the generating seed of all existences. There is no being, moving or non moving, that can exist without me. That means whatever is there, animate or inanimate, that is existing in this material world, cannot exist without the presence of the Supreme Lord as Krishna. Another example is given in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where it describes as to how the Lord is the effective cause of this universe by energizing from both inside and outside. Now, example is given in the purport that just as a prana or a life air energizes the body. Now, there is a life air which gives energy to the body, and when the prana leaves, the body is dead. Similarly, outside also, the prana in the form of oxygen is necessary for one's survival. We cannot survive without the oxygen. So the prana is acting both from inside as well as from outside. So similarly, the Lord energizes the universe both inside and outside. This the Lord does by empowering three Shaktis. There are three Shaktis that the Lord empowers. One is Jnana Shakti, one is Kriya Shakti, and Dravya Shakti. The source of all these three energies, which are required for the function of this universe, is Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. In other words, Garbhodakasaya Vishnu is the potter. He is the clay and he's our instrument also. From another point of view, we can understand that the clay is Prakriti, the potter is Kala or time, and that is the secondary application. So Garbhodakasaya Vishnu is the cause of this creation, and Krishna is ultimately the cause of Garbhodakasaya Vishnu also. So like I mentioned before, Krishna first expands as Balarama. From Balarama, the Lord further expands as in quadruplet expansion called Vasudeva, Sankarshna, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. From that Sankarshna, he further expands as Vasudeva, Sankarshna, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. And from that second Sankarshna, the Lord further expands as Karanodakasai Vishnu, as Mahavishnu. He lies on the causal ocean. Like we have a ocean of water, there's an ocean of causes called causal ocean. So Sri Mahavishnu lies in that causal ocean, and from his exhaling, what comes out is innumerable number of universes come out in the form of bubble. And this bubble further expands as each bubble becomes a universe. Now, what happens is that when, for example, we take birth, our birth happens because a soul has entered into a body, the living entity. Now, due to the presence of the soul, the body keeps growing gradually from childhood, birth to childhood, and growth, and then finally adult, then old age, and finally the body dwindles. But that is when the soul leaves the body, it is called the death. Now, what happens is that similarly, the Lord, as the seed, as the super soul, enters into each and every universe. Now, the universes come out of the pores of the exhalation of Sri Mahavishnu or Karanodakasaya Vishnu. And also innumerable numbers of universes emanate from the pores of the Lord's body. And these perspiration, what is called, uh, each form a universe. Now, ours is the smallest of the universes, innumerable universes. Now, our universe is headed by four-headed, is created by four-headed Brahma. Similarly, there are universes with hundreds of Brahma with hundreds of heads. There are universes with Brahma, which are created by Brahma with thousands of heads, millions of heads, and so forth. So each and every universe, the Lord further from Mahavishnu expands as Garbhodakasaya Vishnu and enters into these universes as the super soul of the universe. That means he is the super soul for each and every universe. And because just as there is a soul present in our body, the body keeps growing. Similarly, the universe also, as it is mentioned here, grows because of the universe manifest. And if you imagine, these universes can't float in the air, but the presence of the super soul within that universe makes it light, and the universe floats itself. Within that universe itself, there are so many planetary systems. For example, in our universe, which is the smallest, there are so many planets, so many stars, so many things are there, being the smallest. So imagine what could be the size of the other universes. But all of them float in the air due to the presence of the super soul, who is none other than Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. From Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, the Lord further expands as Kshirodakasaya Vishnu and enters into each and every living entity as the super soul of the living entity. So the Lord is all pervading as the super soul in every living entity, and he is all pervading everywhere he is present as the super soul. So first he expands as Mahavishnu, then Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, and Kshirodakasaya Vishnu. So this is how the Lord is present throughout the universe across the board. Now there is a example on this simultaneous one and different in teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It says the Lord, living entity, is eternally subordinate to the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is always the master of all energies, whereas the living entity is under the domination of the Lord's energies. So, although qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord, the living entity has the tendency to lord it over material nature. However, being infinitesimal, he is actually controlled by material nature. So, there are three types of energies. One is external energy, one is internal energy, and the marginal energy. For example, our body is made of external energy. The uh, uh, presence of the spiritual aspect is the internal energy. Now, that is the Supreme Lord Himself. Now, if you see the jiva or the living entity or the soul that is there comes under the marginal potency of the Lord. Why it is called marginal potency? Because there is a tendency, the living entity or the soul can be either placed in the spiritual platform or can be situated on the material platform. That is why it's called marginal. That freedom is given to the individual soul because the soul is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, Super Soul. The Lord Himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Vamsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Each and every living entity is by constitution a small part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So qualitatively, there is no difference between both of them, but there is a difference in terms of quantity. Whatever quality the Lord has got, the individual soul also has got. But what is different is that the quantity of what the individual soul has got is very, very minute, whereas the Supreme Lord, being the Supreme, everything is full in Him. The Lord is complete and He is completely perfect and is full also. Now, because the living entity is small, there is a tendency for the material nature to control the living entity. Lord cannot be controlled by the material nature. Material nature emanates from the Lord. The jivas also emanate from the Lord. That is why this jiva is called a marginal potency. Now, because the living entity tends to be controlled by material nature, he cannot at any stage become one with the Supreme Lord. Now, we can never become the Supreme Lord at any point of time because we are minute and we can easily be controlled by the material nature. But we have the freedom of choosing whether we want to be situated in the material platform or spiritual platform. So if a living entity were to be equal with the Supreme Lord, then there would be no possibility of his being controlled by the material energy. So if we think ourselves to be God, we would not have been controlled by this material energy at all. So the living entity is described as one of the energies of the Supreme Lord. So although inseparable from the energetic, energy is still energy and it cannot be equal with the energetic. That means there is something called energetic, that is the Lord. From energetic comes the energy. So in other words, the living entity is simultaneously one and different from the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita itself, the Lord says in 7th chapter 4, 5, he states that earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego are 8 elementary energies. This is what described all these combined together make the Mahat Tattva. And he says that these are of inferior quality, whereas the living entity is of a superior quality. That is, the soul is of a superior quality. And the Vedic literatures also confirm the fact that the transcendental form of the Lord is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. That means Lord's body is composed of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. And the soul, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is also composed of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Now, the nectar of devotion, there is a quote on this reference. It says, if someone has a desire for material enjoyment or for becoming one with the Lord, now we can never become one with the Lord. But if you see, many times people outside might speak that I'm going to be one with God. I will merge into the race of the Lord. Now, both are considered material aspects, which is not by nature constitutional. Now, one is Lord has given the independence, which I have mentioned. That is, if we have a desire to enjoy material life, the Lord puts us into material platform. Some who want to become one with the Supreme, that is, they are called impersonalists. They believe the Lord does not have a form, He doesn't have name, He doesn't have qualities, and they want to merge into the race of Brahma Jyoti. This Brahma Jyoti is nothing but the light emanating from the body of the Lord. For example, we see sunshine. Sunshine covers the sun, is emanating from the sun planet itself. Similarly, Brahma Jyoti covers the Lord and it is emanating from the body of the Lord. Now, those who think that they want to merge into this race of the Lord, they are called impersonalists. But that is also those who have this desire. It is also considered material. The impersonalists cannot appreciate the spiritual aspect of association of devotees and exchange of loving affairs with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their ultimate goal is that somehow I must become one with the Lord. This is an extension of the material idea. In the material world, everyone is trying to become head amongst all his fellow men and neighbors, either communally, socially, or uh, society, wherever it is. So it becomes extended to the unlimited so that one actually wants to become one with the greatest of all, that is the Supreme Lord. This is also a material concept, though it might be looking a bit advanced. So the impersonalists desire to merge into the existence of the Lord, but without keeping their individuality, they have no chance of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. So what happens is that when an impersonalist has got a desire to enter in the Brahma Jyoti and merge with it, they enter the Brahma Jyoti, but they lose their identity. Why? Because by nature, the soul is supposed to be constitutionally situated as a servant of the Lord. But because they are there, they are without a devotional service, and they also don't have the chance of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord because they don't have an idea on the transcendental form of the living entity as also the Lord. So they don't have a chance of chanting and hearing. So unless and until one crosses beyond this stage of liberation, one cannot release the glories of the Lord, nor can one understand the transcendental form of the Lord. So the perfect spiritual concept of life is complete knowledge of one's constitutional position, that we are part and parcel of the Lord, and by nature we are meant to serve the Supreme Lord. That is our constitutional position. One must know that He is finite. That means we are very, very small, but the Lord is infinite. Thus, it is not possible for one to become one with the Lord. It is just not possible. Therefore, if anybody has that desire or aspiring to have fulfill that desire, the material or whatever it is, they cannot relish that sweet taste of devotional service. So, Srila Rupa Goswami has mentioned the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There are two things. One is bhakti, that means trying to enjoy material benefit, and the other one is mukti, liberation. So this bhakti and mukti, he says, these desires are like being influenced by the black art of a witch. There are many people who use black magic. So this bhakti means material enjoyment, and mukti means to become free from material anxiety and to become one with the Lord. Both are considered to be compared by being haunted by ghosts and witches, because while these aspirations are there, no one can relish the actual transcendental taste of devotional service. So, like I mentioned, by position, we are supposed to be rendering transcendental service to the Supreme Lord, which is called devotional service. And if that service aspect is not there, one wants to still exploit, then that is not a constitutional position. Similarly, in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila, he instructs his mother. He says, "My dear mother, devotees whose hearts are filled in the service of my lotus feet and who are prepared to do anything for my satisfaction, especially those fortunate devotees who assembled together to understand my qualities, pastimes, and form, and thus glorify me congregationally and derive transcendental pleasure, therefore never desire to become one with me." That means those who are trying to chant and hear the glories of the Lord's qualities, pastimes, etc., in a congregation, this thing, they receive a transcendental pleasure which no one can get by becoming one with the Lord. Then he further says that what to speak of becoming one with me, if they are offered a post like mine in my abode, or opulence like mine, or even personal association with me with similar bodily features, they refuse to accept because they are satisfied simply by being engaged in my devotional service. So the point is that even if the Lord offers devotees a very opulent position in the Vaikuntha planet, a devotee will not accept unless and until he has got that engagement in devotional service. The next point that is mentioned here is that about Swarat. That means Swarat means the Lord is independent. Uh, the Supreme Lord is fully independent, and the individual soul is also independent, but to a minute extent. Although there is no comparison between the two qualities of independence, the living entity is minutely independent, whereas the Supreme Lord is fully independent. The Lord is free to do anytime, anything, whatever He wants, but we don't have that freedom. Otherwise, we would have been the Supreme Lord Himself. So the Lord is completely independent in all His dealings. There is a statement in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It says there are two kinds of controllers or lords. One who is independent is called a controller, and one whose orders cannot be neglected by anyone is also called a controller. Now, regarding Krishna's complete independence, Srimad Bhagavatam says that, gives an example. Kaliya was a great offender, but still Krishna favored him by marking his head with his lotus feet. Whereas Lord Brahma, who is supposed to be very dear devotee to the Lord, he, although has prayed to Krishna with so many wonderful verses, still could not attract the Lord. So this contradictory treatment by Krishna is just befitting his position, because in all the Vedic literatures he is described as completely independent. So this is the position of the absolute truth. So when the Lord orders Brahma to create, Brahma creates. When the Lord orders Lord Shiva to annihilate, he annihilates. So the Lord is fully independent, and other demigods are dependent on the Supreme Lord. Now, another important point that is mentioned in this purport is that universal difference between the universal form of the Lord and the individual soul. Now, by method of philosophical speculation, the impersonal feature of Krishna is understood. For example, the yogis, they practice meditation or mystic yoga. They meditate on the super soul within the heart, who is the nothing but an all-pervading expansion of Krishna. Now, this super soul who is present, which I mentioned, is an expansion of Krishna as the Kshirodaksa Vishnu. Yogis meditate on that. But devotees, by devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, they realize the complete aspect of the Lord. Now, this is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter. The Lord can be realized in three forms. One is Brahman, that is the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. The second, next stage is Paramatma. And the third stage is Bhagavan. One who realizes this Bhagavan feature, the complete personality of Godhead, already has got the realization of Brahman and Paramatma. But the lower forms, that is Brahman realization, need not have realization of the absolute truth completely. Similarly, Paramatma feature is also not the complete realization. So the point is that by realizing the impersonal Brahman, one just realizes the effulgence that is emanating from the body of the Lord. It's just like the sunshine. There is sun god and there is a sunshine and the sun itself. So similarly, the spiritual effulgence Brahma Jyoti is there, impersonal Brahman is there, but they are all personal effulgence of Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further explains that this Paramatma, the all-pervading feature, who is situated in everyone's heart, is nothing but a partial manifestation or expansion of Krishna. But because Krishna is the soul of all souls, he is also called Paramatma, which is also mentioned in this purport. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, there is a quote which says that Krishna should be known as the soul of all the souls, or he is the soul of all the individual souls and the soul of the localized Paramatma as well. So in Vrindavan, he is acting like a common human being just to attract the people by his pastimes and to show that he is not formless. So the Supreme Lord is also an individual person. Just like we are a person, he is also an individual. But he is different in that he is the supreme and all other living entities are subordinate to him. And all these living beings can also enjoy life of bliss, knowledge, and eternity in association with the Supreme Lord. And even though the Lord expands into so many forms, his forms are one and the same. Just as a material body, which I mentioned, as a material made of 5 elements and the senses, the supreme independent Lord similarly has a gigantic body of the universe, which is the universal form. Now, here is an important point. We have a material body which exists because the soul. Similarly, the Lord has manifested what is called a universal form or a Virat Rupa for the individual universes. And this form of the Lord also is what is called a universal form. And just as the individual body is temporary, similarly the entire universe, material universe, is considered to be the body of the Supreme Lord is also temporary. So the Lord, when he orders Lord Shiva to annihilate, everything is annihilated. So the universe comes to an end. So both the individual and the universal bodies are products of the Mahat Tattva. So one has to understand, Srila Prabhupada mentioned with his intelligence, that just as the material body has developed from a spiritual spark, similarly the universal form of the Lord has developed from the supreme spark called Super Soul. And another important point is that just as the individual soul has consciousness, the supreme soul is also fully conscious. But there is a difference. The individual soul is conscious, has got consciousness of his own body only, whereas the supreme consciousness or the super soul is conscious of all the living beings everywhere and all in across the universe. For example, if we have pain in the body, we are able to realize that pain because of the presence of soul in our body. So that is individual consciousness. But the supreme consciousness or the super soul's consciousness is unlimited, is all pervading. He can realize the pain of the conscious pain or pleasure of the consciousness in all the living entities. So that is how the Lord as the super soul in this material world is conscious of everything, and he knows the past, present, future, everything of each and every individual entity also. So there are examples given before I give the example. Yeah, I've covered all the points. Now, depending on the time, I'll give some pastime. There are two pastimes which I've picked up. There is one pastime which is mentioned about one of the Puranas as to how there was a Brahmana in the South India somewhere. He was a great devotee of the Lord, but somehow or the other, he was economically backward. He didn't have much of money to live a proper life. But he considered that because of his destiny, because of his past misdeeds, the Lord has put him into that situation. But he was a great devotee. But he was not sorry for his material position. But he used to live a very peaceful and satisfied life. And he was very open hearted also. So he used to go and regularly hear Katha, Krishna Katha, whenever any great devotees come. So in one of the classes that he heard that one can even offer anything to the Lord by meditation. That means if one is not having the facility to offer something to the Lord, he can even offer it in meditation. So this Brahmana, he came back home after that, and he started thinking that though I don't have anything, but I can offer something to the Lord by meditating on these activities. So what he would do is that every day he started thinking that I will take bath in Godavari River and so many rivers. All this has been happening in meditation only. So he would take bath in all the holy rivers. Then he would assemble ingredients. He wanted to offer the Lord sweet rice. So one day he thought that he would assemble all the ingredients and then start cooking and see that he offers a very nice sweet rice to the Lord so that the Lord becomes pleased. So what happens is that he cooks the sweet rice. Now, at that point of time, he was not sure whether the sweet rice was cooked or not. So what happened was that he wanted to see whether it is cooked. So he put his, normally it is said that the sweet rice tastes well when it is cold, not when it is hot. So the Brahmana put his finger into the sweet rice to see if it is cooked or not. So the moment he put his finger onto the vessel, immediately his finger got burnt. And all this is happening in meditation only, not real. It's not a true incident. But he's meditating that he's cooking the sweet rice for the Lord and the Lord will be happy. But also in the meditation, he's thinking that I should see if I can offer it to the Lord. So he puts his finger into the bowl. And what happens is actually when he takes out the finger, it is burnt and he's surprised. So this is a pastime where Lord Narayana is observing in Vaikuntha, and then he starts laughing. So all the Lakshmis who are present around him, Lord is served by thousands of millions of Lakshmis. All the goddess of fortune were seeing, looking at the Lord, and they are wondering why the Lord is laughing. He kept quiet. He ordered an airplane to go and bring this Brahmana to Vaikuntha planet. So the plane came and he took that Brahmana to Vaikuntha planet. And once the Brahmana reached there, then the Lord explained how this Brahmana was, through his meditation, was offering a sweet rice which he could not afford, but still he was offering it. But his meditation was so strong that his finger got burnt in truth, in reality. So this is how the Lord was present in the spiritual planet Vaikuntha, but he could understand what was there in the pastime, and he could explain the essence of this pastime to the goddess of fortune. The point is that though the Lord is eternally situated in the spiritual planets, he knows what is happening in each and every part of the universe, and he knows, because he's all pervading, he knows what is the thought, what is the activity in each and every living entity in every part of the universe. So this is one pastime. Another pastime to explain this all-pervading feature of the Supreme Lord is that in the Mahabharata, we see that when the Pandavas were sent to the Vanavas, so Duryodhana wanted to take vengeance on the Pandavas. So he thought that we'll send Durvasa Muni with many thousands of followers to them, so that Durvasa Muni would go there, and then they would like to honor lunch with the Pandavas, and they were in the forest. And he selected a time in such a way that they would have finished and they would not have anything to give to Durvasa Muni and his followers, whereby they would get angry and they would curse the Pandavas. Duryodhana wanted to have fun with them by doing this pastime. So he sent Durvasa Muni, and who had thousands of followers, and they came to the forest. And they all came at a time when the Pandavas had finished their lunch, prasadam. So when Krishna is all-pervading, and he knew what was the trick played by Duryodhana. So Krishna immediately arrived, and they all had finished their prasadam. Krishna came and asked Draupadi, "Is there anything that you can give me to honor?" So Draupadi said, "We have just finished, but let me see if there is anything in the vessel, that which is called the Akshaya Patra." So one small piece of grain came out of that, and Krishna took that and he honored that. In the meantime, Durvasa Muni, what happened was he had come there, and he said he and his followers are going to take bath in the river, and they would come back and have lunch with the Pandavas. That is the time Draupadi was actually wondering, because they already finished and that Akshaya Patra could give them only once in a day. So, but Krishna, being all-pervading as a super soul everywhere, he knew this trick played by Duryodhana. So finally he came to that place and he honored this one piece of grain. And all the Durvasa Muni and his followers, they went to take bath. So when Krishna took this one grain, it is said that when Krishna honors something, the whole universe becomes satisfied. So Durvasa Muni and his followers, when Krishna took this grain and he was fully satisfied, all the Durvasa Munis and his followers were also satisfied. Now they finished their bath. Then they themselves thought that we are so full now, we can't take anything more. But what to do? If we go there, we have to honor, which we cannot. So better we just leave directly from here. So without coming back to the place where the Pandavas were staying, they just went straight away. The point is that Krishna could understand what is happening. He understands, in fact, what is happening in every living entity, their thoughts. He say karmana, manasa, vacha, karmana. What is there in their mind? What is there in their thoughts? What is there in their actions? Krishna can understand everything. So this is what Krishna is as the super soul of all the souls. He understands. So these are two pastimes I show that the Lord is in his all-pervading feature. He is a super soul, he is a supreme soul. Similarly, the universe also has come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And just as our body also comes to an end at the time of death, similarly, the entire universe comes to an end at the time of annihilation. So this is what I have for the class for the day. If anyone of you has got any questions or any comments for the next couple of minutes, I can take them.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Devotees, any questions? Shanta Govinda Prabhuji, Swayam, Prabha Mataji, any questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, very well explained. Thank you so much. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as there are no questions, can I take the class as closed, Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, dear